talk about foundation. Okay, we're really going to talk about the foundation of coaching, what it is, how it works, why it works, and we're not going to go into very detailed strategy. This is what we're going to discuss more next time we're going to meet.
So according to the Office of Special Education Program Technical Assistant Community Practice Work Group, there are 7 principles for providing EI in natural environments. The first is infant and toddlers learn best through everyday experiences and interaction with familiar people in familiar contexts, which is learning is relationship-based, and learning activities and opportunities should be functional and based on child's and family's interests and enjoyment. For example, like helping family how their toys and materials can be used or adopted, or helping caregivers engage the child in learning opportunities that allow for frequent practices and mastery of emergent skills in natural settings. So focusing intervention on caregivers' ability to promote the child's participation in natural occurring, developmentally appropriate activities with peers and family members. The next principle is all families with the necessary support and resources can enhance their children's learning and development. So in here, all means all, which includes income levels, racial and cultural background, educational levels, skill levels, and living with varied levels of stress and resources. So all families have strengths and capacity that can be used to help their child. And family, informally or formally, supports need to build on strengths and reduce stressors so they are able to engage with their children in mutually enjoyable interaction and activities. The third principle is the primary role for us is to work with the support family members and caregivers in children's lives. For example, we are not making family members to be a mini therapist or interventionist, but by providing information, materials, and emotional supports, we need to enhance families' natural role as the people who foster their child's learning and development. The next principle is the early intervention process must be dynamic and individualized to reflect family members' learning styles and cultural beliefs. So family members have their own preferred learning styles, so that interaction must be sensitive and responsive to individuals. So each family's cultural, spiritual beliefs and activities and values and tradition will be different from you have, so you should seek to understand but not judge.
The next one is related to the outcome of the IFSP, and when we develop IFSP outcomes, we have to think about the family needs and family identified priorities. So the idea is that we have to listen to the families. We really need to think about what are their priorities when we're developing the IFSP outcomes. Number 6 is related to the primary role of the provider. And the idea here is that we need to have one primary provider who will communicate with all team members and really support the family in understanding what's going on and make sure that everything is done according to their priorities, according to their needs, and according to the services that are appropriate for their child and their family. And the last principle is focusing on the idea that every intervention that we develop, any practice that we use in early intervention, has to be based on research. Maria, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay, we got a notice that we're not connected again, so sorry about that. So again, the last one is all the 7 principles are really focusing on family-centered practices and how we work with family in the natural environment. So we always think about the priorities of the family, we think about the needs of the family and the child, of course, and we base all of our practices on research and validated practices that are available and kind of published, and of course also on laws and regulation. So this is again just talks about that. This was developed by the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center. We have here the website, and they have a lot of information in the website. And here I just covered that. But here are kind of the website that you might want to look at. They have information about each one of these principles and how you can use them, how it looks, how it doesn't look, how to work with family in the natural environment. So again, we're talking today about foundation, and this is one of the basic things that we need to think about, family-centered practices. Before we even start working with family and developing an intervention, we need to think about how we're going to approach that in the natural environment, working with different families. So now we have another question. And we wanted to know how many of you are familiar with the DEC recommended practices. And Maria is going to do a poll again for yes and no. The DEC stands for the Division of for Early Childhood, and it's part of the Council for Exceptional Children. We know how much detail we should talk about it before we discuss that. So if you can respond to the poll that Maria is putting on.
Go to that fourth box under your name, you'll see that it has changed to the text box, which is a yes or no response. So we'll give folks a few minutes to that. We've got some more responses coming in. All right, ladies, of our respondees, it looks like the majority are familiar with DEC recommended practices, although there's a good portion that have or not. So there you go.
Okay, good. So we can talk a little bit more about that and explain what it is. So the DEC recommended practices, the most recent version was published in 2014. And again, we have the website here that includes all the practices, all the different areas. These are all based on research, so we highly recommend that those of you who are not familiar with that, go there. There are 7 topics area in the DEC recommended practices, including assessment, environment, instruction, interaction, teaming and collaboration and transition, and of course families, and that's the one we're going to focus on today. The DEC recommended practices, the idea was to develop and provide a guidance for practitioners to close the gap between what we know in research and what we do in practice. So it takes all the research base that we have and come up with different practices that we have enough that's supported by research, by values and experience, and recommend practitioners to use those. So again, we're going to focus on the one related to families. The DEC family practices include 3 themes and 10 specific practices. We're not going to talk about the specific practices, but again, we highly recommend to go into the website and look at the information there. The first theme that we're going to talk about is the family-centered practices. The idea in the family-centered practices are practices that treat family with dignity and respect and really involve family members throughout the process of working with their child. We need to think about each family and their own situation. Each one is unique and have their own circumstances and their needs and resources. And we need to think how we can involve family throughout the process based on the parents or the caregiver needs and resources and wants. So this is the first practice. The second practice is family capacity building practice. And in this one, the idea is that we want to provide opportunities for the parents to participate and build on existing parenting knowledge and skill and also develop new ones. So kind of building the capacity of the caregiver in working with the kids and helping them develop and improve.
So the third theme is the last theme is a family and professional collaboration, which includes the practices that build relationships between families and professionals who work together to achieve mutually agreed upon outcomes and goals, which can promote family competencies and support the development of the child. So to build a good relationship with the caregiver, there are a few things to consider. First is establishing rapport, which will be explained in the next slides. And the second is engage in culturally reciprocity. Each family's culture, spiritual beliefs, and activities and values and tradition will be different from the service provider, which the service provider seeks to understand, considered while building a relationship with families. And also be responsive and use multimodal communication. So the communicating with parents via modes that are accessible and convenient for them. So if parents are open to any electronic communication and have access to that, please open to do that as well, to have like a good communication with family.
So we talked about family-centered practices and working in the natural environment. We talked about the recommended practices that focus on working with family and putting the family in the center of the intervention. But we feel that something that is kind of prerequisite for working with family is building rapport. We know that when we build rapport with family or caregivers, the outcomes for both the parent, the caregiver, the children, and the service provider, the outcomes are better. Parents and caregiver buy in to work with the service provider. They are open to listen to new ideas, try new things. Of course, kids benefit from that because they experience more opportunity to practice the skills they need to work with, and the service provider benefits because the skills that we are working on are worked on throughout the time, even when we're not there. So building rapport is something that's very important. And when we talk about building rapport, we think about having a relationship in which people understand each other and communicate well with each other. And to do that, we need to do some work. It's not something that comes always natural. It's something that we need to work on. So here are a few kind of tips of how we can build rapport with families and caregivers. We might want to connect with them based on their priorities, interests, needs, goals, and experience. And the idea is really to listen to caregiver, understand where they're coming from and where they want to go. It's important to ask the caregiver about the vision for the kids. Where do they see the kids in each domain in 1 month from now, in 2 months from now? What do they think the most important thing to work on? So really listen to the parents and the caregiver. We also want to connect with the children. Again, based on their personal interests, likes and dislikes, storybooks, toys, everything else that we can connect with the kids and connect with the caregiver, and that's how we build rapport with the family as a whole. And of course, embed family preferences into the intervention that we're doing, and really kind of gain the family and the child trust. By gaining the trust and building this rapport, we kind of enhance the possibility of positive outcomes in the future. So we talked about kind of, again, the foundation, working in the natural environment, using the recommended practices that are based on research, and of course building some rapport with the parent, with the caregiver. Now we want to think about how we can involve parents and caregiver throughout the process of working with them in the early intervention system. So we're going to talk a little bit about the different phases within the process and think about how we can involve parents and caregiver in each one of the phases. So the first phase that we're going to talk about is the initial intake interview and the assessment. So in the initial intake, we of course get the parents' consent. We explain them their rights. We explain about the EI, services and the system. meet face-to-face with the parents, and again, build a rapport, explain what's going on, and it's very important to involve the parents through that and really listen to them, what they want to do, what their priorities, what they want to work on first. So this is during the intake, before we even start services. We also should involve parents during the assessment. So we have the 3 child outcomes that the Office of Special Education programs require to report on each one of the kids in the U.S., which include the positive social emotional skills, which include social relationship, building friendship, following rules. This is the first one. The second one is acquisition and use of knowledge and skills that include communication. And the last one is use appropriate behavior as needed, which is kind of promoting independence. So these are the 3 goals or outcomes that we need to measure for each one of the kids. We need to ask the parents and get them more involved in that process. Ask them what they think, what they saw, what they want. Based on this information, we can do the assessment in addition to all the other formal assessment that we're doing. The parents can help us identify the child's ability, the child needs, and really think about what's the expectation of the child and the family from the intervention process. Another thing before we even start is kind of talking about the expectation from the process of the intervention. And sometimes we talk with early intervention providers, and they say that parents say it's not their role to be involved in the intervention process. They're not the expert. So we really need to give the parents the power and tell them they're the expert on the kids. They're the one who needs to tell us what the kids can do and what the kids not do, and they have to be really involved throughout the process. So this is again the first phase of the initial intake, interview, and the assessment. The second one is the development of the goals and intervention, which obviously is based on the interview and all the assessments. And parents should be involved in every step of the phase. They need to help with developing the IFSP goals and think about, again, what's their priority. Think about the 3 child outcomes that needs to be reported, but also remember that the IFSP is individualized, which we need to have specific outcomes and specific goals for each kid in addition to the 3 ones that we all need to report on. So again, have the parents involved as much as they can throughout the process by asking questions, really listening to the parents and observing them in the natural environment.
So the second phase, EI providers can enhance caregivers' natural role as the people who foster their child's learning and development. So they can point out children's natural learning activities and discovering with caregivers the incidental teaching opportunities that families do naturally between the provider's visits. So allowing the family to determine the success based on how they feel about the learning opportunities and activities the child and families have chosen, and let them involve in and encourage them to enhance to the next phase, the implementation phase. And so the last phase of the parent involvement is the maintenance and generalization phase. After caregivers pick up the incidental teaching opportunities, they can consist to implement those teaching in natural settings, and it also can be generalized into different contexts. So EI service providers can enhance caregivers or parents by acknowledging that they are doing right and encourage them both to keep using it and also apply it to another context.
So these are kind of, again, the 4 main phases: the initial intake and assessment, development of goals and intervention, the implementation. As Moon mentioned, the parents could be the implementer or partly implementer, and the generalization and maintenance. So we need to have an expectation from the beginning and explain and discuss it with the parents about what we expect them throughout the process, and hope that they'll be involved. I'm going to move to the next one, which is questions. And we already have 2 questions.
We do. Jacqueline has asked, what if you have a parent who is angry about their child needing services? How do you involve them in that?
That's a good question, and I think it's also related to, I believe it was Nikki's question about different culture. I think in both cases, something that Moon mentioned before, cultural reciprocity, which means we need to understand where we're coming from, where the parents come from, and kind of meet in the middle. Parents have different expectations, different experiences, and I think it's important not to push them involved, but gradually help them become more involved in the process. So if in the beginning they sit and watch you, kind of encourage them to sit and watch you doing work with the child, and then gradually encourage them to sit with you on the floor, on the carpet, and engage with the kids. When they see the interaction and positive outcome with the kids, they'll have a better buy-in, they'll have a better attitude. But again, it's a process, and some parents don't feel like they don't feel confident, and that's part of what we talked in the family capacity building. We need to build the parents' confidence, and we need to help them an empowerment to have the knowledge and ability. And again, it's a gradual process that probably takes time, but we need to always reflect of where we are, what we come from, what our beliefs, and then where they come from. What are their beliefs, and sometimes involving other family member, sometimes if the language is a barrier, having someone who has knowledge of the language, but really try to slowly involve the parents throughout the process.
I believe so. So you got Nikki and Jacqueline's question there. We have another question, though, from Susan, and she is wanting to know if there are specific strategies that early interventionists and service coordinators can use to draw families in early in the process, even if they're not 100% comfortable with EI or the support. So any strategies that they can use?
I think one of the things that's very important is from the beginning, discuss the expectation. Because if we start by, coming into the homes and working directly with the kids without involving the parents, that will be the expectation of the parents. But from the beginning, helping the parents understand that they are the experts on the kids. They are the best people to work with the kids and help them. And by talking with them about that and explaining that, and again, drawing them very slowly into the process of the therapy, by asking them first just to sit on the sofa, then sit on the floor, then slowly inviting them to watch what you're doing and maybe practice. So I think building those expectations from the beginning, really empowering parents by telling them they're the expert on the kids, and we're not the expert who comes into the home and know everything. We have knowledge of practices, but we don't know the family, the culture, the context. We really need to get this information from the family. So kind of building this rapport and trust and collaborating throughout the process. Yeah, what I think so.
All right, that's awesome answer, and I think we've got time for one more question. Nikki has asked, how do we get colleagues from other disciplines to follow this same philosophy? I think we've all been on teams where not everybody's on the same page as to their approach.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think by modeling, by talking about the advantages of coaching and involving caregivers throughout the process, I think, again, by giving parents the tools and understanding what the goals, what we expect from the outcomes, what the practice is, we really provide them with tools that they can use in every minute of the day. And this increases tremendously the number of opportunities the child has to develop and practice on the skill they need to work on. So again, it's all through a lot of talking, a lot of modeling, and talking about the benefits of that. And of course, we have research that kind of that support the use of coaching. We have research that supports of parent-implemented intervention. So research said that teaching parents how to implement different strategy with the kids is an evidence base that leads to outcomes for the parents and the kids. The parents feel empowered, feel kind of confidence that they can help their kids develop, and the kids has many more opportunity to practice, and of course that enhances the development.
Right. Thank you very much. Those were very good strategies to follow. I know I said one more question, but I feel like Emily's comment and question within here really fits this discussion that you're having. So we'll address Emily's question, and then if there are other questions that come through, we're going to catch them at the next break. But I don't know if you can see the comment there from Emily. Wanting to know how that it can be tricky in the beginning in setting up those expectations right away. And she wants to know if you ever recommend a few sessions alone with the child to establish a relationship between the two and reintroduce the parent in the new relationship.
I think there's nothing wrong about having sessions just with the child. I think it's important the parent will be present, even just as observer or the caregiver, just an observer to see kind of the outcomes of that and kind of observe, and then after that reflect with the parent or their caregiver. What did you see? What did you think works? Do you think you can do it? Can you try? So really, you need to build relationship both with the caregiver and the child. And you can, and doing, we're talking about coaching parents, it doesn't mean you cannot work directly with the child. It's in addition of working directly with the kids. So you need to do both, working with the child, working with the caregiver, building rapport and relationship both with the child and the caregiver. So I think it's a combination, and it's okay to have a few minutes just with the child and a few minutes just with the caregiver, and then kind of try to include them both together in the next session.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and move on, and we have another question break coming in a little bit. So thanks, folks.
So before talking about the actual coaching caregivers or coaching parents, we need to know how adults learn. So in 2009, Carol Trivet and her colleague reviewed 79 studies of adults' learning method, which also include the coaching. And they coded each study based on the presence of 6 characteristics of adults' learning strategy. So the first characteristic is introduce, which is introducing new materials, knowledge, or practice to adult learners. And the second is demonstrating or illustrating the use of the material, knowledge, or practices. And the third characteristic is engaging the adult learner in the implementation or use of the material, knowledge, or practices. And the fourth is having the adult learner evaluate the outcome of the application. And the fifth is having the learner reflect on the learning experiences. And the last one is engaging the adult learner in self-assessment of the acquisition of knowledge and skills as the basis for identifying new learning experiences. So back to the Carol Trivet and her colleague review, they concluded that all 6 adult learning characteristics are important and associated with a positive learner's outcome. And that the more adult learning characteristics that are included in effort to teach adults new skills, the more likely these efforts will produce positive outcomes.
So it's important to remember these 6 components when you think about how each one of us learn and how we're going to help caregiver to learn. And remember that it's not enough to do just one of them. We'll have to think about all 6 components in order to make sure people will really learn. And we'll talk more a little bit about that in a few minutes. Maria,
Yeah,
do you want to talk about
this
that?
brings us to another poll, and the question that our presenters are asking you to address are how do you typically work with young children with delays and disabilities and their families? So what do you do in your practice? Do you work directly with the child and then give family members homework or something like that? That would be A. B is giving family members strategies to work with their child. Or C, using coaching with the family on how to work with their child. So we'll give folks a little bit of time to kind of think that response through. Go to that fourth box under your name, which is the polling function, and you will see that it's A, B, and C. So you can choose one of those responses. Give folks some time to think that through. This is where I kind of wish we had like music or something, you know, to fill in while folks are filling this response. You could.
You want me to sing? I don't think people will want that. Sorry.
Just post another few more seconds here. And it looks like these are our responses. So of the responses, you can see it's mixed, but the majority, or many of them are saying C. So you can kind of see that. We still had a few that didn't respond, so appreciate it if you would. Thanks, guys. Bernadette, I see you have your hand raised, and I'm going to private message you to see what your concern is. Thanks, guys.
So I think this was a tricky question because I assume all of you doing all three. We didn't give you that option because probably everyone will do that, but this is kind of at the beginning, the discussion of the different options we can work with caregiver and kids, and we're glad to see that everyone is working with family in different ways. Again, I assume that everyone is doing all of these when you work with family on your caseload.
So please read the statement and decide whether the statement is yes true or no false. So coaching is a technique to get people to do what you want them to do.
Maria, are you going to do a pool for that?
I'm sorry. I got lost here for just a second, but now I'm back. Let me switch the polling type here again real quick. Thank you. All right, so here's our next question. Is this true? Is coaching a technique to get people to do what you want them to do? Yes or no? Yes being true and no being false. So we'll give folks a few minutes to think that through. All right. It looks like, as I'm scrolling through, we've got a lot of folks are answering. Give us a few more seconds and see if anybody else is going to pipe in here.
So I just want to kind of refer to Susan's comments about doing coaching is probably not for every family, and every family the coaching might look different. I completely agree with that. I think it's important to involve every family, maybe in a different way, and maybe coaching in a different way, but I think the involvement of the caregiver is a key to success here. So I agree that it's going to look very different for different families, but it's important to try and do it for each one of the family we work with. Sorry.
Yep. So the answer of this question is false. So getting people to do what you want them to do implies a power over relationship. So a person who effectively uses coaching usually asks reflective questions to the coachee, the parents or caregivers, and they're open to the possibilities of what the answers or options might be. So the answers or option might not be what the coach would select, but as long as it can fit within the evidence-based framework of what the coach knows to be effective for promoting child's learning and development, the caregiver's idea can remain. So if the coach has information that the caregiver does not have, then certainly they would share it with the family. And in those instances, the coach just shares the information and then reflect upon it with the caregiver.
So another poll, and again, I look at the comments here, and someone just mentioned this coaching has a bad name because people think about it only in one way, and I completely agree again. It's not just one way and one way of doing it. There's many different ways of coaching and, more importantly, involving caregivers. And next time, in the next webinar, we talk about specific strategy, and we'll go into that specifically. So what is coaching? Is it true? Early intervention coaching is empowering parents.
So again, go to your polling function, that fourth box under your name, and choose yes or no, or yes, it's true, or no, it is false. And give folks a few more seconds here. We appreciate you responding to our polls. That with us not being able to see your faces, this helps us kind of see how folks are thinking. So with that said, I'm going to post that response here. So in this case, let's see if I can't make that bigger. It looks like everyone who responded said, yes, it's true.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's true. That's what the early intervention coaching is, empowering parents. I want to add a comment here and mention that some parents or parents groups don't really like the word empowerment, because when we use the word empowerment, we assume that parents don't have the power, and we give them the power to help their kids. So when we talk about empowerment, we really talk about giving parents knowledge and ability to work with their kids, and really building their confidence so they're able to know that they can help their kids develop. So when we use the word empowerment, some people don't really like that, but again, the idea is to give more confidence for the parents to feel able to help their kids, and that's all about coaching. So here is the kind of the definition of coaching based on Rush and Sheldon from their book. It's an adult learning strategy, again going back to the adult learning component that Moon talked about before, in which the coach promotes the learner, in this case the caregiver, ability to reflect on his or her action, and really develop a plan and think about how you're going to work with the child. So coaching is about improving existing skills and also developing new skills. And a big component of coaching, which we'll talk a lot about next week, of how we can do it, different ways of doing it, is the reflection. How we can help caregiver reflect on what they did, how they going to do it differently, what they want to change. The reflection piece is a very, very important piece in the whole learning process. The role of the coach, in this case the early intervention provider, is to support, provide feedback, and can facilitate the reflection. So again, just a few definition that we thought might be important to include here. People talk about coaching and training and what's the difference, and many people, when they talk about training, they talk about coaching. When they talk about coaching, so it's kind of a combination. So we looked for a way to kind of distinction between these two definitions, and many times when we work with parents, we do both training and coaching. But we want to kind of talk and see what's the difference between them. So training is really defined as learning experience or series of experience that is specific to a specific area and is done by a professional who delivers the information. So training is really the delivery of knowledge. Sometimes during training we had role playing and we have some practices, but it's usually not in the natural environment with the natural people, like the child who the parents will work with or the caregiver will work with. So training is more the delivery of knowledge. When we talk about coaching coaching is the whole process. It's a relationship-based process led by an expert, and it's including questioning, listening, observation, reflection, feedback, prompting, modeling, practice. We're going to talk about each one of these and how exactly we're going to implement them when we work with caregiver next time. So the biggest difference between training and coaching is the idea of where it's done and who's involved. So in coaching, we of course deliver information, but we include the observation, we include the reflection, and most importantly, we use the natural environment with the child. So we really talk about how we're going to do it in the home with the child in the living room, and not just in a room full of professional or caregiver kind of theoretically talk about how we can do it in the future. One more question, coaching versus training. So which one is used to improve performance and behavior? Coaching.
Okay, so again, that polling function, fourth box under your name. You have choices of A and B. There's a C there, but disregard that. And we'll give folks a few minutes. And this is the best place to be able to put your response, is that fourth box under your name. So we'll see how folks are responding to that. Is coaching or training? Which one is it used to improve performance and behavior? Is that coaching or training? Seeing some responses coming in. All right. Let's see here. All right, these were our responses here. So the majority of folks responded that yes, it's A, that is coaching.
Yeah, and I agree with that. We did refer to coaching. The only thing I will add is doing it in the natural environment with the kids. We can do some performance, because I saw some people chose training, and it could be training if we do it in an isolated or controlled environment. If we do it in the home and the performance is based on interaction with the child, then it's really coaching. This is kind of, again, the differences between the two. We want to mention again kind of why it's so important to do coaching and not just training. And I like this quote saying, I see, I forget, I hear, I remember, I do, I understand. And this is the cone of learning, and some of you might know that as the cone of experience based on Edgar Dale philosophy from many, many years ago. And the idea is that we retain knowledge differently based on what we're doing. And as you can see, the highest one is if we say and do, which means we learned the information, we read about it, or we read about it, we heard about it, we saw how it is, we watched different people in demonstration, we participate in discussion, but we also did it ourselves, then the retention of the information is really what the understanding is. And this is a very simplified way of talking about that, and there's some criticism of this kind of cone of learning model because it's very simplified, and there are many things that could influence learning and different components that could influence. But in general, what the research supports is just giving an information, just listening to someone say what we need to do. Just observing someone else doing it is not enough for us to really know how to do it and understand how to do it. So we really need to think about how we're going to include the coaching, which includes all the components that we mentioned with the adult learning theory, with get the information, model the practice, get feedback on that, and get to mastery. So it's really all of these that we really need to think about. And that's why just talking with the parents is usually not enough. We have a lot of research from teachers that show us that just in-service or kind of a one-day workshop is not influencing and changing behavior as much as coaching in the natural environment, in the classroom, in the home. This is what really influences. So again, remember that retention is I see, I forget, I hear, and I remember, I do, and I understand, and that's the most important part. So this is kind of just an illustration of what for us to remember that we need to have all of these components to really retain the knowledge and the information that we give parents, and again, empower them and build on their confidence to help their kids develop. So here we have time again for questions.
Okay, sorry, I'm having a few technical difficulties of my own, so I'm on delay. So I'm hoping I'm coming in at the right time. So as we're looking through some of the comments, let's see. Nikki would like to know from the participants, how many of you feel like you are currently coaching families? And you can respond to this by using the hand raise, which is the third button under your name. So if you feel like you're currently coaching families, please raise your hand. Give folks a few minutes to respond to that. Okay, looks like a good half. Looks like about half of folks feel like they are coaching families. We've got a few folks who said they haven't even started working with families yet, so that's very helpful. What do you think, ladies?
So Mickey has another question. How many of you feel competent in coaching? I think we can use the practice but don't always feel competent of using it. So I think that's a good question. Maybe we can use that for another pool.
Yeah, so I've cleared the hand raise, so if you can raise your hands again, how many of you feel competent in that? Yes, folks are responding. We've got some folks that are commenting that it depends on the family and that they feel confident in the area that they're knowledgeable in. So our first question was, how many people feel they were coaching? And we had 24 hand raises. This time, how many of you feel competent in that? We had 17 hand raises. There you go. 18. Sorry, 18.
So we really hope that, again, today we only talk, more people are raising their heads. We really talked about the foundation. We're not done yet. We have a few more things to talk about. And next time we're going to talk about specific strategy, and hopefully more of you will feel more competent and confident of using. What we wanted to talk about today is the importance and the rationale for coaching parents and really involving caregivers throughout the process. We have a few more comments.
Yes. Ted would like to know if you're going to be sharing any tools that they can use to reflect on how well we are individually implementing coaching in our practice.
Yeah, this is actually the survey we're going to do for today. You're going to get an email with Rush and Sheldon develop a list of indicators for coaching. So we're going to ask you, it will take about 5 to 7 minutes. We're going to ask you which one you use more often, which one you don't feel like are high priorities. We're going to share the information next week and talk about the specific strategy. But this indicator checklist that they developed, this is the tool that was developed to use to help our provider reflect on what they do and what they might want to do differently. And again, it's going to be very different from family to family. You might use one indicator or strategy with one family and others with other families. So again, this will be a great tool for you to use. We're happy to share other tools if you're interested, and we'll discuss those next time.
Wonderful, thank you. So be on the lookout for that email in a couple of days that will have this link that they're referring to. And one last comment, Nikki's got a question for participants to use their chat box to respond in, and that is, what specific areas related to coaching might our presenters help us with? So if you have anything specific that you want them to know about and be able to focus on for our next session, which is actually in 2 weeks, please use your chat box to respond to that. So
Mary, I want to mention that this is actually one of the questions on the survey. So it will be great if you can put it now in the comment or the chat area, but this is also a question on the survey that hopefully you'll complete before the next session.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, I think we can move forward.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the framework of illustrating the process of coaching caregivers or parents. So this is like one example of coaching, how would the process of coaching parents will go. So first step is we need to identify the target goals and break the goal into one or more fundamental skills to coach.
And this is based on the intake interview and the assessment. You decide what the goals that you want to work on with the kids and with the caregivers, and then you take that goals and think about how you're going to teach that.
And the second step is discuss with parents or caregivers, identify the strategies to teach and the targeted skills, and let know about what is parents' expectations are and how can they implement this into their natural environments, and investigate all the things that they can use for the to achieve the target goals.
Yeah, and some people kind of have the misconception that joint attention is done only at the joint planning is done only at the beginning of the process of the early intervention. The expectation actually is that joint planning will be at the beginning and the end of each visit to the home. At the beginning of the visit, you're going to talk about what's going to happen in that, what strategy you're going to use. And at the end of the session or the end of the visit, you're going to talk again about what works well, what needs to be adjustment, what we're going to do for the next time, and how the caregiver can practice those strategies between the visits of the providers. So joint planning is not just something we do at the beginning of the process and don't go back to that. It's always need to be done at the beginning of each session and at the end of each session.
And the next step is create the parent-friendly procedures to teach parents and caregivers how to use those strategies.
So, many times we use jargons, we talk with parents, we use different language that might not be appropriate for every parent. So we really need to think about who are the parents we're working with, how are we going to explain to them the information we want them to get. Again, we're going to do family capacity building. We're going to give them knowledge to empower them and give them the confidence to work. So we can use handouts, we can use videos, we can use verbal communication. We need to think about what will be the best way to reach that parent and give them the information about the specific practice or strategy you want to do. So all of these steps are steps, again, we're going to talk more about them next time. But these steps that as a providers we really, really need to think about, it's something that has to be very intentional, and every step needs to be thought through throughout our process and interaction with the caregivers.
That's one. So, yeah.
So that's the teach the parents. It's more like the training. It's just the providing the knowledge for the parents, with giving them information about the strategy. So we talked about the difference between training and coaching. This piece is really very specific for the training. It's just providing the knowledge. Again, we can do it in many, many different ways. Again, we'll talk more about it next time.
And the next step is coach them to the mastery. So this could be like a circulating process until mastery by set up the action plan, observing, and have a reflecting time, and get some feedback, provide feedback, and decide whether the parents master this targeted skills or not, and keep circulating until they get masters. We're going to talk about more explicitly about each process in next webinar as well. So, and decided as if the parents and caregiver mastered or not.
So if they didn't master, we have to go back to the drawing board, think about what's the action plan, how we're going to revise it, what we're going to do differently, and then go back and do the observation, reflection, and feedback. Again, next time, we're really going to spend the whole webinar on this specific area about each one of the components of the coaching and the different strategy we can do for each one of them. We have some questions. You want to finish this first?
Yeah, so after we think like parent and we agree like the parent or caregiver master those targeted skills, then we can go back to the first step to identify the new target goal and break down into the fundamental skills and go process of the joint planning and create our procedures and teach and then coach again.
So the whole process of working with family, don't just start in the I lost my marker. When we train and coach, it starts even before that. When we think about what goals we're going to work on, how we're going to do that with the joint planning. Remember, we're going to involve caregivers throughout the process. So the caregiver is going to involve in the identifying the target goals, deciding how it's going to do, talking with the caregivers, what's the best way to help you learn? What kind of materials, what mode of communication will work best for you? Then we teach the parents with the information that we taught the caregiver, the information, and then the coaching, the whole process of the coaching, which we'll talk more about again. If the caregiver master the information, the child achieved the goals, then we can go back, identify new target goals, and go through the whole process again. So this is the framework. Again, next time we're going to talk more specifically about strategy. Today is just kind of an overview of what it is, why it's important, how we do it in general. Let's just give you that, and then we'll answer some of the questions we have here. So next webinar, we're going to talk about the last two objectives of the webinars, the strategy for coaching. So again, we're going to talk about different type of feedback, different how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it. It's going to be immediate, it's going to be delayed, it's going to be verbal, it's going to be video. We're going to talk about different strategy. Again, this has to be very individualized for each family and each kind of needs of everyone. And then we're going to talk about strategy for collaborating. So this is all going to be happening in 2 weeks on February 1st. And I think now, Maria, can I mention again this before we go into the
Yeah, you're doing great on time.
Questions? Okay. So these are the indicators that we mentioned. These are 14 indicators from Russian children. Maria is going to send you the link for a Google form. Again, it shouldn't take you more than 5-7 minutes. We're going to ask you if you use them, which one you feel are high priority, which one lower priorities. Again, it could vary depending on the family. We'll share the results. So we ask that you complete that by January 27th. And then we're going to share the results and talk about specific strategy of how to do each one of these indicators. So this is kind of response to what was asked before. And now it's questions. So I asked
Susan had asked a question that she then come back and said that there might be a question that you're going to address in the second webinar, so about parents achieving mastery. But Tanya wanted clarification where you're talking about the target goals. Are those IFSP goals, or are you referring to something different?
No, that's what we're talking about, the IFSP.
So, okay, so the outcomes that are on the IFSP. Wonderful. All right. And did you want to address Susan's question here, or do you want to wait until next time? You know, mastery is something, again, it's very individualized.
But I think by observing the parent or the caregiver, and when I think about mastery, I think about two components of mastery. And Maria, can you mute yourself because I have a lot of echo? Sorry. Thank you. So I think about two components. One component is that the caregiver can really implement the practice or the strategy accurately based on the feedback and do it in the natural environment with the child in a correct way. Because in every practice or strategy we think about, there's some steps. We can think about task analysis, what we need to do first, what we need to do second, how do we respond to the child, what kind of prompt we give to the child. So first of all, the first component is to make sure the parent or the caregiver know how to use the practice. The second component that I believe is very important is how the parent or caregiver feel about their being competent to do the practice. The caregiver feel confidence of doing it, they feel they need more support or more feedback. So always think about mastery about these two components. Can they really do it correctly in the natural environment with the the steps that we think about in strategy? Most of the strategy we're talking about are evidence-based. So we know how to do them. We just need to help the parents do them in a way that it's more convenient and appropriate for the context of their family. But not just knowing how to do it, we also need to make sure the parents feel confident and implement the best practices. So that's why I think about mastery, both components together.
Okay. I've been kind of scrolling through the chat box and I am not seeing any other questions. So unless you have any other last comments you'd like to make, we can wrap this up. Okay.
No, we're just looking forward to next time when we really kind of dive into different strategies. You have here our contact information. Feel free to contact us if you have specific questions, specific requests. If you want some more resources, there's tons of resources about coaching and early intervention. We'll be happy to provide some more information and make some changes to the second webinar to reflect the needs of the kind of wishes of the participants.
Okay, there was one final question that did come in, and it was from individual that wants to know if initial evaluations, should we be describing the sessions as providers will coach families? So how do you set that up, I guess, to...
Yeah, I think we should talk about partnership. I think we should talk about partnership between the caregiver and the providers. And I think it's important to talk about the expertise that each one brings into that partnership. We don't have to use the word coach. We need to think about collaboration and how we partner together to make sure the outcomes for the family and the child are the best possible. So again, talk about how we're going to do it together. Use the word we, us, and not just I as the expert.
Thank you for that last response there. So, folks, with that being said, I believe that we can conclude our webinar for today. I do want to remind you of those couple of things. You will immediately get an email after this session with the survey link for the to get your certificate. So you're going to get two emails, this one and then a second email in a couple of days that is going to include that link, the survey that Hedda and Moon would like for you to complete so that they can make sure that this webinar in 2 weeks really meets what you are asking about. So I also in the chat box posted again the link to the webinar that is in 2 weeks. So if you haven't already registered for that, you will need to do so by going to that link. I don't think there is anything else I need to share. So ladies, thank you so much. Great webinar. Folks, thank you for your participation, and we will see most of you, or hopefully all of you, in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bernadette, I know you had your hand raised. Is there anything I can help you with? If you want to use your chat box, you can do so. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that you're done. Actually, you can even push the talk button above your name, and you can actually use your microphone if you'd like.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, wonderful. What were you saying? I couldn't hear very well during much of the presentation. I do have a hearing loss. I need to have it addressed again. But what were you telling me?
Well, you had your hand raised, and so I was wanting just to make sure that there wasn't anything you needed from me.
Oh, I didn't know how to send my, was I supposed to hit another button or something to send you what I typed in my chat box?
Once you hit enter, it goes into, and it's sent.
Oh, okay. You didn't address it though, right? It was a question about bringing in your own bags of toys, the providers bringing in their own bags of toys when we go into the homes of different clients.
You know, we didn't address it because it didn't come through, so we didn't see it. So our presenters are on still, and they can hear our conversation. So they will. We'll make sure that that is something that that they can talk about in the next session in 2 weeks. But also make sure that you add that in your comments in the survey that they send you.
Okay. Are you saying it didn't? This is my first time. I'm just so thrilled and delighted that I'm sharing this on the webinar. It's my very first ever because I looked up the first. Huh?
Congratulations.
Thank you. I know it sounds so low level, but I'm going to get better. I'll take more. I didn't have the right technology before. I didn't have, let's see. There was something I didn't have, and someone, a wonderful man from the help desk helped me to log in and get on this time.
Great. Well, the first time's always the hardest, so next time you'll be easier. And then if you want next time, I go on a little bit earlier. So if you want to log in earlier, and we can work through any technology questions that you have or anything before the webinar actually starts next week or 2 weeks.
Okay. I logged on about 10 minutes beforehand, and I even heard. I think it was your voice saying. You were introducing everybody, and you had like 5 more minutes before it started. So it was very good. I was wondering how I could improve my volume.
Well, I tell you what, how about we deal with that when you log on in 2 weeks, and we can work through all of that in that moment.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
You are very welcome. I'll see you in 2.
Okay. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
We here? Do you want to talk with us? Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah, okay. I just...
the difference between Mickey and my response.
What? You're so patient, you're so kind, you're so nice, Maria.
You looked at the positive. I looked at like, okay, never mind. Is it still recording? I want to take it off.